It's said to be a success in business, it helps to get in on the ground level. Hey, everybody's got to start somewhere. That's this week on Motoring 2000.
TSN's Motoring 2000 is brought to you by Quaker State Motor Oils, formulated for the vehicles you drive and the way you drive them, and Midas Car Care, the way it should be.
Hello everybody. You know, as we get older, there are things in our past we never forget, like our first love, our first phone, and yes, our first car. For yours truly, it was a Volkswagen Beetle back in the 60s. It was used, it was cheap, and it was economical. But what are the young people going to do today? I mean, if you read all the automotive magazines, and yes, even watch this program sometimes, you'd think the automotive industry is simply obsessed with luxury cars and sport utilities. Well, this week, we're going to revisit with a company that doesn't even have a luxury car in its lineup or a sport utility. Well, at least not now, but it's a company that has never forgotten how important that first car can be. That company is Hyundai. Back in 1984, you could pick up a new Pony for about $5,000, and close to 80,000 Canadians did so, making Hyundai the #1 import company, even ahead of Honda.
Well, I think Hyundai's glad that there's no more ponies on the road. I think their sales took off, not when they started making good cars, but when the last of the ponies that served as poor advertisement for their abilities was gone from the road and people started trusting Hyundai. They're one of the success stories, I'd have to say, certainly of the segment, if not, you know, of Canada's economy car section, for sure.
You know, perception's a hard thing to battle against, and the perception that was in the Canadian consumer's mind of Hyundai was one that we weren't real happy with or proud of, and it's taken us a while to change that. Our sales are up 30% year to date, 1999 over last year. That's on top of a 20% sales increase in 1998 over 1997. So the Canadian public is beginning to become aware of Hyundai once again, and our sales numbers are starting to prove that. Well, the Accent's our bread and butter car. 50% of our sales mix is with our Accent. So just from sheer numbers, it's very important to us. But more than that, the Accent is really a first-time car buyer's car, and the quality that we now have in our Accent vehicle, it's a good first-time experience for our buyers. And that's important for us because once we get them into the Hyundai family with our Accent, we're now seeing them start to move up to our Elantra and Sonata. So it's our entry into the Hyundai family, and one now that we think is going to keep people in the Hyundai family and move vertically upwards in our product lineup. So extremely important for us.
It's an all-new vehicle in terms of platform, chassis, and the engine has been heavily modified. In fact, with this new Accent, it's grown larger in dimension, roughly a little bit over 2 inches overall length, and also length in the wheelbase, and the vehicle is also wider. What it results in is a more stable ride, comfortable ride. In fact, we think we'll have the tops in the class, best in class in terms of ride quality and also noise isolation. Previous Accent had a little bit more of a dated look because it was round. There was a lot of curvy forms, but what we're seeing now with vehicle styling is having a little bit more definition, and by doing that we pronounce it with more straight lines and edges to give a car a little bit more stronger look.
Well, if you're a 25-year-old and just got married, you've got a kid on the way and signing your first mortgage, this isn't a forgotten segment. I mean, this is your segment, and And that's important to remember. This is the first time a new car buy for many, many people. Not everybody's buying sport utilities right out of college. So it's very, very important, I think.
The Accent's main competitor in the subcompact segment is the newly released Toyota Echo.
I like the styling of both the cars, both the Accent and the Echo. These cars are bland enough. They don't have air conditioning, usually is standard. They don't have leather seats. There's not a lot of features in them. So to make up for that, to make people, especially young people who are concerned about attitude and style, I think they have something special. I think the styling has to be a little bit out there, a little less conservative than in other segments. So I like them both.
We think, why we're very excited about our sales performance over the past 2 years, it's done without trucks or luxury cars. Now, having said that, we would dearly love to be in those segments. And the good news is, in June of next year, our dealers will be selling an all-new sports utility vehicle called the Santa Fe. So that's just going to be another weapon in our arsenal now to go after the marketplace with.
Ow! Ooh, that's smart. More later on Kenzie's Corner.
The sport utility market is exploding and at every conceivable price. This week we take a look at the newest entrant at the affordable end of the spectrum, the new Kia Sportage. The Sportage rides on the longest at 104.3 inches wheelbase in its class, longer in fact than the Jeep Cherokee. This and a compliant suspension delivers an acceptable ride that doesn't suffer from the choppiness of some mini utes. The suspension, which was tuned with the help of Lotus, consists of double wishbones up front and a multi-link design in back. While the ride comfort rates as above average, when it comes to handling, Sportage suffers from considerable body roll and consequently a rather vague feel. The Sportage's front disc rear drum brake system has the desired effect. The stops are straight, fade free and the pedal easily modulated. Perhaps the only quibble? The ABS is a little too eager to intervene. Power comes from a 2-litre inline-4 that came by way of Mazda. The 16-valve twin-cam unit is good for 130 horsepower and 127 pounds-feet of torque at a respectable 4,000 RPM. Noise, vibration and harshness are quelled effectively, and when you mat the gas, there is some response, meaning it does not have to take a back seat to any of its 4-cylinder competition. Matched with this motor is a choice of either a 5-speed manual or optional 4-speed electronically controlled automatic that comes complete with a hold button. It simply allows you to lock out the overdrive and not hold a specific gear, as the name implies. As far as equipment's concerned, the Sportage comes fairly well loaded. You get decent leather-covered seats that are comfortable, even over the long haul. You also get power windows, locks, mirrors, a decent set of analog gauges, cruise control, and a radio that offers decent sound quality. But you knew there had to be a but. This cheap black plastic that sits around the instrumentation and the gear lever. This thing, even when in gear, has got more play in it than most manual boxes have in neutral. Instead of shifting through a nice crisp gate, it's like stirring a pot of stew. I hate to make light of it, but it really is laughable. As an off-roader, the fundamental elements of the Sportage are all in place, sort of. The body-on-frame construction resists the torsional torture you encounter in the backwoods, and that supple suspension means there's no need for a kidney belt. Select 4 low and the Sportage is up to tackling steep grades without any fuss whatsoever. However, the lack of a limited slip differential limits the true off-road potential. While it's true that the Sportage is an inexpensive sport utility vehicle, sadly, it's also rather cheap. That dashboard and the gear lever being prime examples. But you know what? That's not what irks me. If you use this vehicle to capacity and fold the seats down, then tumble them forward, This bit of carpet and this cheap sticky back foam are all that protect the sending unit wires. That's the thing that operates the gas gauge. Slide anything of substance in here and kiss your gas gauge goodbye. In terms of utility, the Sportage is up to snuff. It can tow up to 2,000 pounds when equipped with trailer brakes, and the roof rack will hold up to 100 pounds. The trunk is also capable of swallowing 55.4 cubic feet of stuff when the seats are folded down. Even with the seats in the raised position, you have access to 25.8 cubic feet. The combination of that warning sign and the amount of body roll is why you won't find any of these in the Sportage test drive.
Time to introduce the newest member to the motoring long-term fleet, the all-new Mazda MPV. Unlike its predecessor, the first thing that stands out with this new minivan is the fresh new sporty design. Now, has Mazda studied the competition and built a contender in this crowded market? We'll find out over the next few months.
This truck is a International 1947 KB2. I've had it for 12 years. Its box has been short and 2 feet. Of course, a flip front end, 427 Chevy, turbo 400, Dana rear end, 355 gears. Basically, you just fill it up at the pumps, and away you go. I haven't seen too many like this. It's so different. It's not like everybody else's. Most of them you see now are either Fords or Chevys or S10s and that, but this one being so rare, I don't know, people seem to like it, young and old alike. Not too many people have something like mine, and that's what the wife said. She said, it's different, you know? Like there's so many vehicles that all look the same, but this thing isn't, and then I sort of got hooked, and I don't know, it's a part of me, it's kind of hard to get rid of. I'm not the type to buy one and sell it, you know, move around, so I don't know, might have it forever.
Our Midas tip of the week concerns power steering fluid. Most of today's cars hold less than 1 liter of power steering fluid in the entire power steering system. That's not a lot of fluid, and in the summertime that fluid gets really hot, which degrades and breaks down the fluid with time. Every few years you should think about completely replacing all the fluid in that system, whether or not you've experienced any problems, and the time to change it is before some component fails. Most people wait until it's too late. Now the fluid, when it's in good condition, should look fairly transparent, and a light tan or golden color is ideal. Don't substitute any other automotive fluids in the power steering system. Get the correct fluid, and if your car has front wheel drive, which usually means rack and pinion steering, regular replacement of that fluid might save you from having to replace the steering rack. That's your Midas tip of the week.
She's all sweets and bucket seats, sweet 6-cylinder Mustang, power packed and really stacked. Sweet 6-cylinder Mustang, low gas diet made me try it. Sweet 6-cylinder Mustang, you're my kind of car. Yes, you really are. She's a root-toot-tootin', big 6-shootin', sweet 6-cylinder Mustang.
Why don't you come in and see what a terrific deal the Ford dealer will give you on a new Mustang? It's got all kinds, all colors, all options. Pick out any one you like. All except this one. This one's mine.
Sweet 6-cylinder Mustang.
Along with the Accent, Hyundai has chosen San Diego to introduce their brand new 2000 Tiburon. Now, most of the changes are cosmetic, including a front end with a lot more added to it. 140 horsepower under the hood of this car, and you can get into it for about $18,000, so it could be called an entry-level sports car, your first sports car. All right, it's now time to join Bill Gardner. And Bill, can you remember your first car?
Well, Brad, I'll tell you, the first few years I had my driver's license, I had no use for cars. motorcycles were it for me. But I'll tell you, my first four-wheeler was a hand-me-down pickup truck, a 66 GMC that my dad gave me. The first car where I actually bought with my own money, I could call my own, was a 71 Chevelle, and there's days when I wish I still owned that car. Anyhow, what I want to talk about this week is checking the tread depth on the tires on your vehicle. It's something that's very important to the overall safety of operating any kind of motor vehicle. And a lot of drivers I find today are just not aware at what stage of the life their tires are at. As the vehicle accrues mileage, of course, you know that the tires are going to wear, but exactly what stage are they at? You need to know this, and if you're not capable or willing to check it yourself, you need to get the car in once in a while and have this checked. And it's wise to do it several times per year. Now this Hyundai Elantra is a 98 model. It's got 43,000 on it, and when I take my tread depth gauge and measure the tread depth, we find that we've got 630 seconds remaining on the tires in this car. They're pretty evenly worn. They're all season tires that were original issue on this car, and there's no reason why this car isn't viable going into the fall and winter time. There's still enough available tread depth. There's no sign of cracking on these tires, and the wear looks pretty even, so there's no alignment problems. Probably just a simple pressure check will do, but your car may be different. So let's have a look at some examples of 3 other tires over here, show you how you measure the tread depth, and show you some of the things you'll find. Now this particular tire just came off a Honda Civic the other day. It's worn down to about 430 seconds tread depth. So it's appreciably more worn than the ones we just looked at in the Hyundai. Now a brand new tire, passenger car tire in this size would range between 10 and 30 seconds depending on the tire and the manufacturer. The big problem with this particular tire though was twofold. One, uneven wear. You can see that over here on the shoulder that it's quite more worn than it is over here. And the big problem with this tire is that it's heavily cracked. If you look at all the way around the tread on this tire, we've got a lot of weather checking and cracking. And when a tire exhibits that type of cracking, the adhesion is not going to be good in rain or snow. This next one is pretty well worn out. You can see that the tread wear bars that are built into the tread are almost flush, and this tire is down to 330 seconds tread depth. Now this tire would be even a handful in the summertime. In a heavy rainstorm, you'd be close to aquaplaning with a tire with that kind of tread depth. So that one had to be replaced as well. Now you can see that the wear was fairly even though on that tire. It's a well-worn tire, but pretty even wear. A little bit here on the edge from cornering, but that's to be expected with the kind of mileage on that tire. Now this last tire is a snow tire that's seen one season, and snow tires start out with usually between 13 and 30 seconds tread depth, and this one is still at 30 seconds, so it's more than viable for reinstallation for a couple more winters. Now a typical sport utility tire that you'd put on a pickup or four-wheel drive quite often has between 13 and 30 seconds tread depth when it's brand new. This will vary from one tire to the next depending on the make and model of tire you're talking about. Now, as I mentioned earlier, passenger cars typically 10 to 30 seconds when they're new. So I suggest that you be aware of what the tread depth is on your tires and adjust your driving habits accordingly, because obviously you can drive a car with brand new or full tread depth tires much more confidently than you can a car with tires that are 3/4 worn out. You may still have enough tread depth to keep the car safe, but you just can't drive quite as briskly in adverse weather conditions. And I'll tell you one thing, in a typical Canadian winter, a set of 4 snow tires is money well spent. If your original all-season tires are 3/4 worn out, you might want to think about going that route before you get into the winter weather. Till next week, I'm Bill Gardner for Motoring 2000.
If you're big into cars, check out motoringtv.com, and while you're at it, download a copy of Autopilot. Autopilot software searches out the matches to your automotive interest and makes the most of your online time.
I once saw a guy with the blue wheelchair symbol in his windshield parking in a regular parking spot. Well, I was outraged. I pounded on his window and said, "Listen, buddy, you've got your spots. You leave those to us." Hey, it's just a joke. And particularly after wrenching my knee getting out of the shower this morning, I really have more sympathy for this sort of situation. A friend of mine broke his thigh bone earlier this year. He's had 3 operations. He drags himself in and out of his cars with his crutches. It's a real challenge. At least we'll eventually get better. Thousands of Canadians go through this kind of thing every single day of their lives. Well, you know, at least they're in Canada, where we and the United States are much better equipped to handle this than places like Europe or Asia. Oddly enough, we've got the Vietnam War to thank for a lot of that. Tens of thousands of veterans came back from that conflict with severe injuries, and as part of the reconciliation process, it's now commonplace to see ramps in addition to stairs, wheelchair accessible washrooms, and of course dedicated parking spots. Another thing that's contributed to this, ironically enough, is safer cars. A crash that 20 or 30 years ago might have been fatal is now survivable, except the victims are not dead, they're severely handicapped. Well, that's not a bad trade-off, but it raises a whole bunch of issues we still have to deal with. It also shows where the next generation of safety improvements in cars is coming. We've pretty much gone as far as we can go in terms of preventing deaths with airbags, seat belts, side curtains, and the like. The law of diminishing returns is really setting in there. What we're going for next, the next lowest hanging fruit, if you like, is injuries to the lower legs. Cars like this one have reinforced footwells and pedals that pivot out of the way in a crash to try and keep your legs from being mangled in a crash. This sort of technology will work its way down into every car as the years go by. Meanwhile, all of us have to do whatever we can to make these people's lives as easy as possible. And if you don't, I'll hunt you down and beat you over the head with my cane. I'm Jim Kenzie.
You know, there was a day when one word was used to describe an economy car, and that word was small. Well, not anymore. The Accent, along with its main competitor, the Toyota Echo, have increased their passenger and cargo area to a point where they've got more room than most entry-level sport utilities like the CR-V or the RAV4, and they're a lot more fun to drive. Our first impressions on the Accent, they've got a winner, but of course Graham Fletcher will take a closer look on a future test drive as we continue to bring you more stories about cars and the people who drive them.
What I'm doing now is a stupidity. It started out as a hobby. I was a professional artist, and I worked my way into doing cars. I met my wife 10 years ago, and she said, geez, we could make some money doing this. She didn't know we couldn't.
You get strapped in the car and they say fire it off. You forget there's anybody there. You forget about everything in your life and you concentrate and your mind takes over. You throw fuel to the afterburner, pull the trigger, and you're there.
TSN's Motoring 2000 has been brought to you by Quaker State Motor Oils, formulated for the vehicles you drive and the way you drive them. And Midas Car Care, the way it should be.